was going to say thank you everyone for joining today, and thank you, Dr. Silva, for letting us interview you with Teen Health Journals. And I just wanted to start off with a quick introduction. So, everyone, meet Dr. Annelise Silva. She's a graduate of the Wright State University of Medicine and the national president of AMSA. Not only is she a leader, but she's also an active advocate for improving the healthcare system. And she started in high school, and she's always wanted to contribute to the community and truly serve them. And as of most recently, she has matched into radiology and is eager to contribute to the field. All right, so we can started off with the question. So I'm going to be interviewing alongside V. And yeah, we're just going to be going back and forth with a couple of questions. And at the end, you guys can um, ask some questions that may have not been covered. Starting with the first question, we were wondering what educational path did you take to become a medical doctor?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, thank you so much. I'm so excited to chat with you guys today. Thank you so much for inviting me to chat. I'm really, really excited. So, education wise, so high school, then college. I went to college at Barrett the Honors College at Arizona State University. There are honors colleges, if you weren't aware. So they're usually at the big institutions, and then they'll have like a smaller section that is like the honors college, which is really exciting. And then after that, after college, I've always wanted to go into medicine. It was always the dream. I was super pre-med all the way. I was a psych major with a bio minor, did a lot of research, did a lot of those kinds of things. But then I got burnt out at the end of college, and I was like, well, I know I'm trying to become a doctor because I want to be there to serve my community, but how can I serve my community if I don't know my community? And so for that, I ended up joining the Teach for America Corps. So Teach for America is it's the sister program to the Peace Corps, but it's in the States, and it's more kind of focused in gaps in education across the US. And so I was an 8th grade science teacher out in Massachusetts for a couple of years, learned a lot, and really built my understanding as to why medicine, because I realized that I got into teaching because I really wanted to advocate for Black and Brown voices, specifically for those who are either female or have uteruses, and to be able to share that and be able to help those students access STEM. But there's also only so much you can do as a teacher in the classroom. And so I realized, okay, I have this platform to be able to access medicine. Can I combine my love for medicine and my love for education in a path as a doctor? And so afterwards, after I finished my Teach for America course, I was also finishing up my master's in education at the time. That brought me to Boston. And so I did, I was finishing up my master's while I was working full-time as a researcher at the Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, and doing psychiatric neuroimaging work. So looking for things like what in the brain is associated with things like eating disorders or schizophrenia or concussion, and like how can we help diagnose and treat those diseases and disorders a little bit earlier and support. Which is the research I've kind of always wanted to do. And then I ended up making my way to med school and then going from there. So the question was up to med school, right? Or is it all the way through med school?
Yeah, just up to med school. I think that was a great answer. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Victoria, do you want to say the next question?
What made you choose radiology?
Yeah, good question. What made me choose radiology? So my dad is a radiologist, and my grandfather was a radiologist. And so a lot of it came from me of just seeing radiology. And that's how I always saw medicine growing up. I grew up with like all of these x-rays around the home and all of those kinds of things. And then when I was in high school, my dad kind of did a take your daughter to work day situation. And so I went to work with him. I sat in the reading room. If you've never been into a radiology reading room, it's all like the lights are really low. They've got like 6 or 7 huge computer screens in front of them with all of the different imaging going on. It kind of looks like Space Command. And I found it really, really exciting. I started doing some research with my dad, and just really fell in love with the field. There is for radiology, it's more than just kind of looking at scans. There's procedures that you can do. You can talk with patients. You can do a lot of research, a lot of education. So I really, really like that aspect of radiology and ended up falling into there.
Awesome. So, what was the most important college classes that helped you prepare for medical school?
Oh, that's a good question. So, my if you had asked me before medical school, I would have probably said like organic chem and like I loved all my psych classes and like bio or those kinds of things. But like after medical school, if I were to recommend courses that will be helpful, um, like all the general requirements, yes, but definitely biochem, like for I would take your biochem near your MCAT as close as you could. And also, if you can't do that, then make sure you're taking it like right before medical school because that's pretty much the first semester of medical school is like just biochem again, but faster and harder. I'd also take anatomy and phys just so that you can see it for the first time. Again, the thing with medical school is that you're expected to do everything just like a million times faster. And so if you're learning it for the first time, that can be hard. So seeing anatomy and phys again, if you can take an immunology course, I would highly, highly recommend that. Immunology and cell bio, those would be really, really good courses. An abnormal psych class is pretty much your whole psych section. So if you're able to come in and know, here are the disorders for psychology, like you're already halfway there from that perspective. Hmm. Because I was neuro focused, I ended up taking like a neurodevelopment course. But if you want to take like an embryology course, which is like how humans are made, I think that would be really helpful too.
Thank you.
Mhm.
How did you prepare for the residency match process, and what were the emotions you went through during
Ooh, okay. So actually, clarifying question. Is it more so like just how did I like do the application or like how did I prepare like my whole CV for residency?
it? It's more in general, like for both.
Okay, cool. I think so when you like, I think the way that I prepared my CV and all of that for residency was around a similar way that I prepared things for medical school. I think things that when you're putting together your CV, a lot of it is I always chose activities that made me really happy. I was never really one to go and say, oh, I need to get shadowing done. I need to get, research done. I need to have teaching. I need to have volunteer. Like it was never something that I approached my CV with a checklist. It was always what's going to make me happiest and what am I most interested in. And so that's usually how I ended up building my CV. I think also really critically is finding mentors in the field. And so who are the people who are doing things that you're really excited about, that you're passionate about, you want to learn more and are willing to work with you so that they write you really great letters of recommendation. I ended up having really fantastic letters that I'm really grateful for, but that's because I got really involved in doing things like, for example, within my specialty, I got involved with all of the big specialty societies and thinking about how do I do that? How do I learn more, et cetera. But you also still have to do that while balancing school. And so that's how I ended up preparing for residency is like, how do you balance the schoolwork with the extracurriculars, with like being a person, all of those kinds of things, and the mentors in the field. And so that's kind of, yeah. So the emotions with residency, oh, it's an up and down roller coaster. I get, there was a lot. I also was applying while I was running running AMSA. So most of the time you're applying in medical school where you're like balancing school and all of that. So I was balancing a job. So it was a little bit different, but I think emotions, um, up and down because you never really know what's going on. You're always worried maybe I didn't get enough interviews, or maybe, like I didn't get interviews at the programs I was like signaling. So in residency, you can signal either geographic regions you want to be in or programs that you want to be in. And so there's this whole kind of game of like, which ones do you give which signals to, and how do you navigate all of that? And so I just have never been somebody who really wanted to play the game like that. So when I was coming in and I was like, oh my God, everybody has all of these things, there was that kind of panic of, am I doing it right? But it worked out. We're here. And I think my advice still stands is stay in your lane, like stay in your pocket, because like whatever you're doing is probably right.
So, going a little bit more, I know you touched on some like extracurriculars. What do you think like made your application stand out when it came to like applying for like medical school and even residency?
Oh, good question. So with applications, I think that it's one of those things, and it's also like recommendations from admissions directors as well, is that it's not enough to just do well in school anymore. Like that, I almost think that it's like I'd rather get a B in a class than get straight A's and only straight A's kind of thing. Now, to be fair, getting straight A's and doing all the things is awesome. But I think that there's more so, again, with as competitive as medical school and as residency are, it's it's one of those things that the admissions officers really want to see that you know what being in medicine means. And being in medicine doesn't always just mean you are hitting all of these academic marks, because ultimately when you're a doctor, there's no grading system. Like taking a test is a skill, just as like being, but it's more important the person that you are at the end of the day, right? When you think about your doctor, yeah, you want them to be good, but like what makes them good is how much they relate to you and how like compassionate they can be, or, are they willing to go the extra mile to take care of you and your family? And so I think when you're putting your extracurriculars together, that's why I always went with the what's going to make me most happy, because it's one thing to have this kind of robot CV that you're getting into medical school with, but really what people are looking for is you. And I think that's also just a good recommendation for college applications too, is like when you're putting together your activities, what's going to make you, like what's resonant for you. So like for me, for example, I'm really passionate about teaching. So I did a lot of education stuff. I also really love radiology. And so I combined my passions for radiology and education and did a lot of I started programs that ended up doing radiology education. And I really love mentoring. So I ended up building out like a nonprofit that ended up working with early career women of color to help build them professionally and like personally as well. So like I love I like leadership. So like being able to develop like leadership opportunities and do leadership coaching work. So like all of those kind of different pieces, I think really helped me be able to build a strong CV so that when I was on interviews, my story could be told a lot easier. Like this is who I am. And my like CV reflects that, as opposed to me trying to be like, okay, but I did this like research project once and I just did it because I need to check off it, but I kind of hated it, which is sometimes what people do.
Thank you.
What advice would you give to a medical student who wants to go into radiology?
What advice to give to a medical student who wants to go into radiology? Well, first, I think it's important to figure out which, what kind of radiology you want to go into. So with radiology, there are three kind of major tracks. So you could go into diagnostic radiology, which is probably what you're most familiar with the like space screens, and you're looking at an image and you're diagnosing it. You could go into interventional radiology, which is kind of like surgery light. So it's basically like vascular surgery, just without all the stress and pressure is like what I like to say. So like if you, for example, have like a patient coming in with a stroke because they've got a blood clot in their brain, the interventional radiologist can literally go and they'll be imaging in real time and then be also like taking out the blood clot at the same time. So it's really cool. You get to diagnose and then intervene at the same time. And then there's radiation oncology. And so radiation oncology is really more for like cancer patients who you're doing radiation planning with them, you're being able to work with them and their whole cancer team, and really plan out that kind of treatment with them. And so that area is really cool too. A lot of that's typically through imaging. And so you try to figure out which of those three pieces that you're interested in. And then from there, for medical students, the preparation is a little bit different. So like if you want to go interventional, for example, that's a much, much more competitive field. Like, I mean, radiology is competitive in general, but IR is even more competitive because the biggest class of IRs I've seen is 3. And so it gets really, really competitive. And so you have to think about what kind of research you want to get into with early you. It's a lot of, can you get the right mentors in the field to help you get to the next level? Are you doing enough surgery rotations, and are you shining on your surgery rotations? Those kinds of pieces. With diagnostic radiology, it's a lot more chill, but I think it's more so like if you already know, because most people don't realize they like radiology until their 3rd year because they don't often know about it. And so if you're already starting in radiology, it's more so get involved. So like get involved on the national level, get involved in your radiology interest group, get involved with research, get involved with, different societies, come to conferences where you can network. Those would be more my recommendations on that front.
So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like since radiology is such like a huge and expansive field, like what role would you want to play when it comes to patient care?
Good question. So I think when it comes to patient care, radiologists are really interesting because, they're not going to be always the front and center of the healthcare team, right? Like you're not coming in, you're like, I'm going to go see my radiologist today. Unless you're talking to like a breast radiologist, then you're probably talking to your breast radiologist or your interventional radiologist. And so I think that the way that they impact the healthcare team is that it's pretty critical, right? Like if you're sending out, pretty much everybody's getting scans. And so they need radiology to be able to make those clinical decisions of where do we go. So if like, for example, if you're wondering if your patient has cancer, you're going to need your radiologist to know whether or not it's cancer or not, to be able to draw that biopsy, to get that tissue sample, to be able to tell you, okay, this is definitively what they have. This is like, this is how you need to move forward, those pieces. And so I think radiology, when you're thinking about patient care, is that it really can't move forward until, or some of them, right? Like if they're imaging based issues, you can't really move forward until you know what's going on, until you can see it. And so I think radiology has a really, really interesting space in patient care because people understand what they can see. If you're throwing like lab values and numbers and like tests and charts and all of those kinds of things, it can kind of just gloss over your patient's head. But if you're like, hey, here's the picture, this is what's going on in your body. People can, oh, it raised my hand. That's fascinating. Put that down. So if you've got that aspect, I think then it helps build with patient education, helps build patient trust. And so that's kind of where you end up building out that care, is because people understand what they can see. And so there's a movement within radiology to build that aspect into more of the practice. And so that's really exciting. And so I think a lot of people don't realize that radiology is kind of a choose your own adventure. You can choose how much patient contact you like, or as little patient contact as you like too. So that's also really nice.
For the next question, how has your experience and time in AMSA shaped how you view medicine and entering in the field?
Sure. Yeah. So, so AMSA is the American Medical Student Association, if y'all are not familiar. And so AMSA, as you all, and is everybody here is in high school, is that correct? Maya?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Love it. Y'all are already ahead of the curve. So once you get to college, you can join most of the colleges have an AMSA chapter. If they don't, reach out to us and we can start one and you can get free membership. It's great. But most of the colleges have an AMSA chapter, and that's kind of like your big pre-med chapter. But we also cover medical students, and we're all over the world. And so AMSA is the oldest, the biggest, and the largest medical student association in the US, arguably also the world. And we started in 1950 as the student section of the American Medical Association. But then we broke away because we disagreed with the AMA stance on civil rights, the Vietnam War. AMA is a lot more conservative on a lot of things, and students felt like they were not getting with the times, and we needed a space where students could have our own voice, be able to advocate for where we saw the field going and what was needed at the time. And so that's how we ended up we're coming into our 75th year. And so we've had a lot of history in being able to shape where healthcare is and advocate in that space. And so we've been advocating around things as small as stopping smoking on airplanes and like helping start Earth Day, all the way to like helping set price caps on insulin, helping work towards reproductive health, helping to work in establishing the National Health Service Corps. So AMSA's had a lot of history at being in the forefront of where medicine is moving. And so that's what ended up getting me involved. So I actually wasn't involved in AMSA in undergrad. but I got really involved in my AMSA in my medical school chapter. And how did that apply to, sorry, I forgot the second part of your question. I got so excited about AMSA. What was the second part of your question?
We wanted to know.
Oh, it was mine. Never mind. Sorry.
Oh, did I ask it or Victoria? Did you?
Victoria.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, I can take it from here. The second part of the question was how has it like shaped your view in medicine?
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah. So how did it shape my view? So I think that it was really interesting because I was never really a huge, big advocacy person in like college and like high school and that kind of thing. I know it probably doesn't come across right now, but I'm actually like a pretty shy person. And so I was never really that big, like, let me be in front of everyone and share my voice and that kind of thing. But I think when you start seeing like, and you can't be blind to injustices anymore, you feel like you have to find that space. And how do you have your voice? How do you say something? And AMSA was really that home that was able to help me bring out and teach me how to use that voice. And so even in the presidency, I've learned so much in terms of how do you not only run a business, so that's also crazy, running a whole business right out of medical school, but then also how do you take what you're seeing and your experiences and then translate that into action, was really, really critical for me. And it's a skill that not a lot of doctors, like a lot of doctors care about, but they don't necessarily have formal training in. And so that's one of those things that medical school doesn't, it'll teach you how to be a doctor, but it doesn't necessarily teach you all the different parts of how to be a doctor. And AMSA really does a great job of filling in those gaps. And so that's what really drew me to AMSA. And that's how I was able to really grow and thrive because of it.
All right, this connects to the first question, but like, what are some like challenges and difficulties you face like leading such like a big organization?
Oh, goodness, yes. So, and I'm sure a lot of you in Teen Health Journals are probably can relate as you are experiencing and building out your own kind of business. I think it's hard because when you're jumping from student to leader, you're used to being a student and you're used to having somebody tell you what to do or giving you some direction and that kind of thing. But then when you launch into business and you're at the top of the food chain, you're like, oh, I guess I'm the boss now. That's crazy. And so I think that for me, as I was navigating that space, it was how do I trust my gut and how do I trust that the direction that I'm driving the organization and the vision that I have is a good one. How do I learn how to lean on my teammates? I think there's that difference when we're talking about executive leadership where you could be a really phenomenal all-star worker in a field, but that doesn't necessarily always mean that you are geared for leadership. And that's a whole different skill set. And that's also, leadership is also a different skill set than management. Because you could manage a team, but be a really terrible leader. And so I think for me, it was learning how to be able to balance all of those at the same time. And then also having to build all of that, but at this level of a scale, as you know, because I had done nonprofit work at maybe the regional level. I did, leadership work at like a chapter level or those kinds of things. But then once you start going and hitting this kind of big national and international space, and you're talking at the White House, you're talking with the AAMC, you're talking with the National Academy of Medicine, and you're like the person, like the youngest person in the room, and you're representing that voice for future physicians. I think that there's a lot of times where you can feel that imposter syndrome of you're like, am I the right person to be in this room? Am I saying everything right? But I think that over time, like I learned how to build that trust in myself, that voice and that leadership. So it's been a really good practice, and I'm going to continue to practice on residency too.
As the AMSA president, what do you prioritize when it comes to helping your members?
Good question. So AMSA we oversee, I think, over about 150 plus chapters and 30,000 students across the US and abroad. And so when we're thinking about the priorities for students, it's really, what's also really great about AMSA is that it's also mostly student run. So when you all get into college, join your AMSA chapters and then also think about AMSA leadership in the future. Because you can run into leadership, and I have pre-med like on my board of trustees. And so I think when we're thinking about the priorities for members, it's really having a pulse. We have a good pulse of what students need because most of us are students or like have recently just graduated like myself. And so you know pretty well what you need when you're like struggling through it. And so some of the things that we recognize is that medical training is really brutal. Like it will just kind of suck your soul out of you if you're not careful and you're not, protective of your time, your peace, and your space. And so AMSA does a lot of work of how do we help nourish you as a person and not just as this like robot, medical student machine, or as my sister who's a sophomore in college, who's like, I can be an academic weapon. And I'm like, don't do that. It's not that serious. So I think so when we're prioritizing how do we help students, one, it's how do we help make sure that we take care of you first. I think a lot of times, again, there's a lot of privilege associated with being a medical student, and that's definitely something that we like reckon with and we hold space for. But there's also not a lot of people who are speaking up for medical students, and they also are like the bottom of the totem pole. They usually get, treated the worst out of everyone. And so there's a lot of times that people are not speaking up for medical students. And so we have that opportunity to do so. And so it's reflective of what do our students need? What does the country need in terms of healthcare? So we're really, really plugged in with current events and what are the concerns that are happening from patients or for the government or from those kinds of aspects. And then you marry those two and find what is the sweet spot and what is the bandwidth of what we can handle. And we go from there.
So we were wondering on like what are some plans you have for the future of AMSA, or you can also like your career in general.
Yeah, so I'm so excited about AMSA because I'm going to be moving into my immediate past presidency in about a month here, and our president-elect who's coming in is just fantastic. They're a really close friend of mine, and so they're going to be super great. I think one of the things that AMSA is really excited about is that in the past we've had a huge like history and advocacy, but during COVID, it kind of like we lost our presence on Capitol Hill a little bit just because like everybody was isolated. So we really launched kicking that back into gear. And we also are really moving out more into the educational space. Me and a couple of our board of trustees and our staff were at the United Nations a couple of weeks ago and doing some really great work in that regard. So trying to build out more relations with the UN. And other really big international organizations. We're also kind of structuring our leadership as well, which is exciting to increase engagement. So opening up our action committees a little bit more, moving standing committees and building those like research and professional development, those kinds of pieces. Our AMSA Academy is growing also really excitingly next year. That's where I'm going to be focusing on with my background in education. So AMSA Academy is like our educational arm that teaches courses that are not commonly seen in medical school. So things like reproductive health, things like gender and sexuality or transgender health, things like racism in medicine, humanities in medicine, those kinds of topics that are critically important to a medical education, but most medical schools won't teach that specifically. But we're going to be building some other new awesome courses in there as well. So I think that there's a lot of really exciting things coming down in the pipeline for AMSA. That y'all are going to just be right at the cusp of being able to join once you're in college. So, or if college is the plan. So that's, I think, a really, really exciting space. In terms of my own plans, goodness, I think I'm just excited that that I matched. I just matched on Friday. So I'm still sitting with that. And that's also a little bit crazy because I'm getting these emails of like, okay, you need to start your scheduling and you need to do all these things. And I'm like, I really was out here just trying to plan my honeymoon, but like, okay, here we go. But I think I'm really excited because I'm excited to see what this next chapter is. I'm somebody who usually has my life like planned out to a T, but I actually like didn't plan my life past residency. So I think that's scary, but also really exciting because I've also learned through my job that there are so many paths that your career can take you, especially if you have a medical degree. And so it doesn't have to just be practice. I could go into nonprofit work. I could go into consulting work. I could go into government work. So I think that I'm more excited at the possibility of chances. I'm just kind of letting those opportunities come to me, which is a really interesting space to be in, because usually I was so like, okay, here's the things that I'm doing and et cetera. But now it's more so like, okay, what's going to be, that's a new evolution of what's going to make me happy. But as I start to think about things like building a family and building out, where the rest of my career is, I think I'm just excited that it's open, and that I get to do that as a radiologist now, which is still really exciting.
You talked about this earlier, but how do you balance being a leader of a very huge community with other aspects of life and study?
That's a great question. And you should ask this to like every single doctor that you meet, because everybody's going to have their own answer. For me, I live and die by my Google Calendar. So I definitely do that. I think that's helpful for me to plan. I think also the balance is um, learning my bandwidth and learning when I'm like riding too hard on too many things and starting to put boundaries. So, oh, kind of mute you, Katya, if that's okay. Um, anyways, so yes, in terms of balance, I think that, yeah, so there's that piece. I think that it was also really helpful for me to even just like schedule, it sounds kind of silly, but scheduling in me time onto my calendar. Cause if I didn't schedule that, then I'd be like, oh, I could like answer another email. Oh, I could take another meeting here. So like being really intentional, like scheduling the time that I need to do for myself, and then taking those breaks. So like if there is, and I think you'll probably see like if there's PTO, take your PTO type of situation. But I think it's really, really true, because especially within medicine, again, you always feel like you're competing with everybody else. And so you always feel like you have to do the literal most all the time. And I think that for me, the balance is realizing that I literally can't, because I'm going to burn myself out. And I only learned this after burning out multiple times and starting to realize that I got to take care of myself. So things also like, also things like therapy and like, those kinds of pieces as well, I think is really critical for that balance too. And then, having that conversation, with your family or your partner, especially in medical training, because it's really, really hard to date somebody in medical school. And my now husband and I, we did long distance all through med school. He's an engineer, so he wasn't doing med school too at the same time, fortunately. But it's still, there's that's something that's pretty common in medical school, that either like you are dating somebody doing long distance, or you find and you're starting to date somebody maybe like in your medical school class, and then you have to figure out how to couples match. It's like a whole thing. So I think the balance is just also being really communicative with your loved ones about, hey, this is where I'm going, and like not being afraid to reach out for help, and probably reaching out earlier than you think you need to, is all those different types of balance. But I will say it changes. So it changes, like my balance in high school is much different than my balance after high school versus also my balance now. So also be willing to be flexible and let that what balance looks like change depending on what you are and where you need at the moment.
Thank you so much for that. So I know you talked about imposter syndrome a little bit, but like, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome, whether it being in like the medical field, or if so, how did you like overcome it?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Still have imposter syndrome. It's definitely still there. It's just different. I think it just kind of changes. And I think that, I'm a woman of color in medicine. And so like, I think, but there's also different facets to, my experience as the type of woman of color in medicine that I am. But I do think in terms of imposter syndrome, there's that kind of space of, medicine is still a very male dominated and white dominated field. And so I think that, when you're seeing your white and or male colleagues are in spaces where, you're out here doing the most, and some of them are like skating on, and like, and I'm not saying that they don't work hard and they're not working hard as well, but there's that kind of unconscious bias that automatically kind of triggers for me that like, oh, like am I not as good as them, like am I not in that kind of space in that regard. And so I think that it's a lot of, again, I've been real, and I've kind of sound like a broken record here, but I've been really, really intentional seeking out mentors and specifically seeking out female mentors of color who are in medicine, because then I can kind of process with them and like explore what that means and how do I prepare, or even things as simple as like, in radiology, I think only about like 20 or 30% of the field are women right now. And so there are programs that are notoriously not really kind to residents who get pregnant during residency. And so those are like those kinds of questions of like, can I find programs that are going to not look down on me if I decide, or if I do get pregnant during residency, how can I, be supportive? And this is also not just radiology. It's kind of like, it's any field really. And so I think that there is that kind of space of any kind of woman or female identifying leader in spaces of leadership that can get questioned. And I think for me, identifying as an Asian female, there's a lot of times where there's that expectation to be quiet or obedient and not really rock the boat. And so I had to learn really how, especially actually in this particular role, how to use my voice and push back a little bit around, those ideas and those stereotypes. But it's hard, right? Like, I think it's hard because even in the role that I have, I'm still early in my career. And so you have to kind of find that balance of how do I push despite the fear that like I don't have the power in the room. And I think that that's a learning process and a trial and error process as well. But it's again cliche, but like you also miss the shots that you don't shoot. So there's that kind of piece of like, well, if I want it, let me at least ask for it, and we'll see where we go from there. But I won't, if things won't change if I don't ask for that. So, long answer to say I'm working on it. And I think that that's something that I've also experienced with my mentors, is finding people who are willing to say that they're working on it too.
How did you manage to balance your work life throughout college and medical school?
Like, are you saying like how did I balance my work life with like with school?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think like I don't know if I guess like balancing work life in school, I think that you have to just get really good at scheduling, and you also really have to find, so I find what I like to do is find areas where I can have multiple wins at the same time. And so if I'm going to dedicate my like self to a job or something, like if I'm like, for example, like in college, if I need like money or those kinds of things, I was always looking for like work study programs or like an RA position where it's like, I'm already doing this, but if I can make money while I'm doing this, that's awesome. Or if somebody's paying me and I need to study anyway, let me do that kind of thing. So I was always looking for things that I really liked, but also things where I could kind of hit two birds with one stone, in the sense of like, okay, I'm already doing this, or I'm really invested in this, but can I also, do they achieve two things at the same time? And so, and also that was also super helpful of even just also balancing fun for me. So like sometimes I was like, okay, cool. Like I can't go and like just like, especially with medical school, is I was like, I can't like be like some of my business friends who were like, okay, like, and we're going to go to this party and we're going to go to this party. I was like, okay, cool. I can go to this party, but I can't go to this party too. So I think there's that kind of balance, but then I would be like, okay, but can we plan like a really cool party that's an event through my club kind of thing? And so like, so you plan like a gala or a ball or something like that. And then like, people go an after party afterwards. So it's like, okay. So I think like when you're looking at, because you only have so much time in your day to do things, is really trying to be strategic with what you are saying yes to, and can they kind of hit two or more of your objectives at the same time.
So, what advice would you give to your younger self? This could be like in medical school, in college, or even like in high school.
I think the best advice I would have given myself is like breathe. Like, it's going to be okay. I think that because I didn't have that perspective that I did that time, it always felt like everything was so much all the time. And I'm sure if I looked back on myself in 10 years from now, I probably would give myself currently the same advice. But I think that there's also a space of like, it's okay to breathe and enjoy what you're doing and where you're going. You don't, I think with medicine, it's a lot easier to think about like, oh, I have to hit all of these markers really, really perfectly. And I need to like be an amazing student. I need to do all of these things right. And I think that there's a point where it's like, you're also still experiencing such an incredible time in your life. So it's like, it's okay to make those mistakes now. And in fact, you probably should be making those mistakes now. Don't be like stupid about it, but like make some mistakes. It's okay. You'll learn and you'll grow from it. So I think that's probably where I would have been, is like, I didn't have to be so like tightly wound, I feel like, as I was like younger, because I was like so stressed all the time. And I was like, okay, like it's okay, you can breathe, it'll be okay, you'll go where you need to go and everything will work out exactly in the way that it needs to. So I guess the other side of that is trust yourself, because like you know what you need to do and you know that it'll work, and you can also rely on if things don't go the way that you're expecting, that you'll still be okay after that too.
Another question. What is the future like Doctor for Changes conference, and can you walk us through the purpose, activities, and overreaching goal of it?
Oh my goodness, yes, I'm so excited. Okay, let me pull up a screen for y'all here. Let's see if it'll open for me. So FP4C, or Future Physicians for Change, is AMS's annual meeting. And it's a really, really cool event. So typically it's geared for our members. Ooh, allow multiple presentations. Oh, is it okay, Maya, if I share my screen?
Yeah, no problem.
Amazing. So this is FP4C. So it's a jam-packed 3-day experience where you start off with Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill. And then we then have a lot of really awesome keynotes, everything from like trauma-informed care to like reproductive health to AI and medicine, which is really, really exciting. So it's in DC. We go to the Hill. You have things, let's see, at a glance. Here's more information about Advocacy Day. So what we will also be doing is like kind of meeting with different caucuses and teaching about there. We have our poster session. So if you're doing research, so it's past right now, but like in the future, if you're a med student and you're doing research and you want to present research there, you can do so here, which is a really awesome opportunity. It looks great on your CV. It counts as a publication. So this is a really good thing to get involved with in the future. There's a pre-health fair, which is really exciting. So this is where we bring in admissions officers from medical schools to the conference, so you can network and talk to them and learn a little bit more about their program, also learn a little bit more about what they're looking for. They come and recruit students from our conference, which is really exciting. There's also a sim challenge, which is really cool. So sim challenge, there's a pre-med sim challenge and a medical school sim challenge. You can put together teams. And I won't play, actually, maybe can I play the video here? Oh, this is so loud. Sorry, everyone. Is this just it? Okay. Basically, what you're seeing is that they are simulating working on a simulated patient. And so they have to work in teams to diagnose and treat their patient. And so you can do that at the medical student level. And this is like with like simulation teams, so like simulation dummies. It's not like a real person. And this is how they actually train medical students. But you can do that as a pre-med, or you can do that in the med student level. And so that's also something that's really exciting to put together. Let's see. Other really exciting things is the AMSA InnoFest. So that's something new this year. Basically, it's like our version of Shark Tank, which is really cool. And so we've had, this is the final kind of judging round for InnoFest. We've been working with groups from places like Penn and Yale and Harvard and Stanford and all of these other groups. So if you're a medical student, you have this innovation that you want to pitch, we have opened that. And so then they're going to be coming to DC to do their final presentations. Here are some of the finalists. Very, very exciting. And so then we have a huge panel of judges, which is really exciting. We've also are partnering with Google Health and HP to be able to do that. So there's a lot of really exciting things within Interfest that we're doing as well. And then we also have a gala, so we get to dress up and have fun, and it's going to be a masquerade ball. So there's a lot of other really awesome things. So like things like exhibitors, so going around to see all the conferences. We've got keynotes, we've got wellness activities, a member hub where you can meet all of AMS's national leaders and all of those kinds of things. So it's really, really exciting. Again, would love to see all of you out there. The only kind of caveat for high schooler students is that you have to be 18 to be able to come to convention, or if you want to, and again, I already told Maya this might be a special offering for your group, is that we just have to kind of let me know just how many students would be interested who are under 18, but you just have to have your parent register and then come with you to chaperone you through it. And that's only just because, again, you've got such a huge range of people there, because you've got, undergrads, but then you also have med students, you've got residents and those kinds of things. So we want to make sure that our program is accessible for you. And I know, for your parents, we just want to make sure that all of those, and also is like, we don't want to have to be, there's those like liability things with minors. If you want to come, we'd love to have you. We just need you to bring your parent too. It's really what it is. So that's FP4C. It's an amazing event. It's happening the 17th through the 19th of April in DC. So if that's something of interest, just let Maya know, and then she can kind of get into contact with me, and we can kind of figure out what that all looks like for you. But if you're interested in actually let her know, and so she can let me know by the end of the week, because we're actually coming up to the end of our room block right now. And so if that's something and you guys want to be able to register for hotel at conference prices, let me know early so that we can make sure you guys get the most discounted prices that you can.
Thank you for that. This will probably be the last question before students can ask their own.
Yeah.
But if you're in the shoes of a high schooler currently and you want to go into medicine, what are some steps you would take?
I think for a high schooler who's interested in medicine, which it sounds like most of you are, I think that it would be first and foremost focus on figuring out opportunities that can help you learn a little bit more about what the field is, and not just in medicine. Don't shadow just doctors, shadow nurses, shadow lab techs, shadow all of the different kind of healthcare roles that you can, so that you can learn a little bit more about the healthcare field, but also the healthcare team. Because I think that's really critical. I think a lot of high school students don't recognize that there's so many other ways to give back and to be able to serve in the healthcare system that isn't as a doctor. And it's totally okay to be able to shadow PAs. I think that it's, I chose being a doctor because it resonated with the kind of goals and the situations and where I was. But I have had several friends who thought that they were going to be doctors, and they go in a PhD route, or they go a PA route, and those kinds of things. And so take the time to just explore as you're shadowing, not just specialties, but actually also just completely other fields within healthcare too. So you have a good idea of what you're signing up for, because it is a doozy. And you also, again, it is an expensive doozy as well, because there's so many hidden costs with being in medicine as well. I think another thing for high school students to get involved with is also, if you can get involved with a research project early on and just learn a little bit more about medical research, I think that would be awesome. If you can't, that's also okay. You will have plenty of opportunity to do so in college. And also, that's also just so you can also figure out if research is your jam. If research is not your jam, that is also okay. I think then beyond that, it's just continuing to do what you're already doing to try to get into college. It's sitting in what's the volunteering things that make you happy, because a lot of the things I volunteered in high school, I still kind of kept into college. And so it just kind of evolved of what that looked like. But mentorship, for example, I did a lot of mentorship in high school, did it in college, did it in med school, doing it now, so I think that things that you're starting and you're finding that you like to do now, just think about how you can continue that in college. And it also it doesn't really quite matter what college you go to. And that's also a really weird thing to say, is that like from medical school, you can get into college or you can get into medical school arguably from anywhere. And so there's something to be said, for example, like I was talking about my sister, she's fantastic. She's pre-med, she's a sophomore in college, and she's over at UCLA. UCLA, fantastic school, but also one of the hugest pre-med populations out of any of the schools. And she faces so much more competition in that, and so much competition for opportunities because she's at a school, even though it's a great school, but she faces that much more competition for the same spots. And each school only has the same amount of spots. So I think obviously get into the school that you want to go to, but it's like, don't kick yourself if you're not at like this like T20 prestigious school. You will still be able to get into medical school. You will still have opportunities to really shine. And then hopefully you get involved with AMSA once you're able to, so that you can take that all to the next level. So high school right now, just keep going. Keep going and have fun, because like this is the funnest part, and you will be able to like just start building these skills before you hit the next level. So it's all good stuff.
Thank you. I have some questions from the RSVP form, but I just want
Yeah.
the space right now. If any students have any questions they want to ask, now is a great opportunity to ask them.
I have a quick question. You talked about burnout earlier, and like as high school students, especially like going into college, it would be interesting to hear how you dealt with your burnout.
Yeah, great question. Good question. I think that it's being able to start noticing the triggers for burnout. Like when you start, like, I think sometimes it's hard for you to navigate burnout once you're already in burnout. So I think for me, once I learned what my triggers were of like, oh, I'm like not eating. Fascinating. I should probably do that. Or like, I'm like, because I stress, like, if I'm too stressed, sometimes I forget to eat because I'm like, I'm doing all of these things and I'm like, I should probably eat something. And I forget, like if I'm doing that, or if I'm not really getting enough sleep and I'm realizing I'm only sleeping like 3 or 4 hours a night, but I'm doing that like multiple times in a row. I'm also like much older than all of you all. like my body can't handle that like it did in college. I could get away with it better in college. Now I definitely can't. And so I think that there's those kinds of pieces. And so when you're dealing with burnout, I think it's what was really helpful for me is to be able to take a step back and really think about am I doing what I want to be doing with my life, and am I the person that I want to be right now? And so when I have to like, I only know to ask that when I realize that I'm burnt out. So I was trying to figure out how to learn to hit that earlier. But like if you're in the midst of burnout, I think it's really important to take that step back and be like, okay, I am like at my wit's end. I like feel like everything is like up in flames around me and I'm really, really stressed out. I think one, just acknowledging that is super powerful, because sometimes it's like, okay, sometimes I feel like I have to like be strong and fight my whole way through, but you like really don't have to do that. So it's one, acknowledging it, two, taking a step and being like, again, is this what I want to be doing? And am I the person who I want to be right now? And if the answer to that is no, then taking a beat and like recognizing that, one, if you put it all down, things are not going to go up in flames. Like it's really okay. And just take a second and process, well, what do you want to be, and what do you want to be doing? And that can help you recommit to where you're going. And I think it's a really good practice to start learning even now in high school, because like you'll hit that point over and over again as you go through medical training. And there's also so many times, I think I haven't met a doctor who hasn't questioned, why am I doing this job? Right. So I think there's also that question of like, as you're also thinking about it, it's like the work gets hard and the work gets a lot. So you have to also be super clear into like the why are you doing this? Because that's what pulls you through it. But, and then also with the burnout, then the practical stuff of like, do you like, depending on the level of burnout, like, do you need to go talk to your therapist? If you don't have a therapist, should you get one? Because everyone should have a therapist. It's always a great time. If you can't get a therapist, can you talk to somebody? Like, if you go to church, can you talk to a priest? Can you, is there other people that you can talk to process that with? Or like, if all else fails, you could even talk to ChatGPT and be like, hey, ChatGPT, I'm stressed. Can we just like have a moment together? Like, that's also totally fine. So I think it's just being able to acknowledge it, process it, talk about it, and then think about where do you want to be. And that usually helps. But there's also, I will say, a difference between burnout and depression. And so if you find that you're in a depression or you're in a depressive episode, that's a different story. And you should probably go down that different route. And if you are in a depressive episode, that is also okay.
Thank you so much for that response. We probably have time for like one more question. So if anyone has like any question that was left unanswered or you had in the RCP that you want to say, now is a great time to do so. Okay, because I saw someone wrote a really good question on the RCP. So someone wrote, would you recommend the BSMD program compared to like the regular medical route? And what are like the different benefits and disadvantages of both?
Good. So yes and no. So I think so the BSMD program is really great if you like know for a fact that you want to go into medicine. But like that's an early thing because again, if you haven't really done enough of the understanding of what the field is, then it's hard for you to be like, I am going to make the decision that it's like asking, it's like trying to find if you're gonna like marry someone like as soon as you get out of college or as soon as you get out of high school, which people do. But like you have to be like really darn sure. And so I think that it can be good because I think that having that training over time is actually really good ultimately in the long run to being a physician if you know that's what you want to do because you have more time to build that as opposed to if you're going straight into medical school and you're like, okay, I've got 18 months to become a master of medicine before I hit clinicals and before I have to take the first part of my boards. Here we go. So I think that that could be a benefit. And it also like, takes out the stress of having to apply to medical school. But again, you have to be incredibly sure. And it's also like really awkward if you like, because there's so many times that people find in college that they're like, oh my God, what did I sign myself up for? So actually, there's times in medical school that people feel like that too. But like, so I think that it can be really good if you are 100% sure, like you are diehard and I am willing to like marry this career from the jump. I think however, there's also that commitment to being in one place for a really long time. And so if you're at a BSMD program in a place that you actually kind of hate, that's also really hard. And so what's also kind of nice is that, you have the opportunity if you're out of a BSMD program, like the kind of general track, you have the chance to either switch places, like in a different place, like go to med school in a different place, or you can take gap years. And you're gonna hear so much mixed messaging on whether or not a gap year makes sense or not. I'm biased. I took 4 gap years between med school and college. And then I'm taking a gap year now, but it also was amazing for my career because I don't think I would have had this kind of role if I hadn't taken those gap years. But if that's something that you are kind of like me and you're like, I would love to be able to see something other than literally finding my entire 20s out to medicine, like that's because like once you're on the medicine train you kind of keep going for a little bit until the end, and it's really rare for somebody like me to like, it's really rare to take a gap year in between graduation and residency for med school. So like again, once you're usually on that train, you're usually on that train for a really long time, and you can deviate off of it, true, but it's a little bit harder to if you're already committing so early. So I think it's really up to you as a person.
Thank you so much for that last response. Oh, did someone? Okay. Thank you so much for that last response and just for this like overall whole entire interview. It was very insightful, especially for me because I like am really into radiology. And yeah, so thank you so much for letting Teen Health Journals interview you. I'll definitely leave like your email in our chat for anyone who wants to reach out or has any particular questions that they didn't get to touch on now. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully this was helpful, you all. It was super great to be able to chat with you. And thank you so much for inviting me again. I really love being able to chat, and great questions too. So thanks for that.
Before everyone leaves the meeting, I think we should give Dr. Silva a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Thank
And
you.
congratulations to you all. This is amazing. And I'm excited that you all are engaged. And hopefully, yeah, if there's any other questions that I can answer, if you ever want to chat a little bit more about, radiology or life or medicine or anything like that, I'm happy to chat.